Good morning, Colin. Well, hi, good morning, everyone. As Polly already mentioned, I'm Miriam. I'm the director of CHD's EMR and Wireless program, and I am excited to start this new segment, which we're going to do every 2 weeks to give you insight into what is going on in the EMR department and within our initiatives, through which we fight against the involuntary exposure to RF radiation coming from cell towers. As I'm sure many of you are already aware, one way we are doing this is through our Stop 5G initiative. Through this initiative, we represent communities in their fight against cell towers that are proposed close to homes and schools that could harm the children and the environment that they grow up in. So today we're going to talk about one of these communities that we are representing in Sitka, Alaska, and it is my pleasure to welcome one of the community leaders that we're currently representing, Hal Spackman. Hal is a retired educator turned advocate from Sitka, Alaska, and he is part of Sitkans for Safe Tech, which is the group that's leading the effort to fight a 120-foot cell tower that is proposed in the middle of their small residential community and pretty much right next to Hal's house. I'm also welcoming our chief litigator, Scott McCullough, who is representing Sitkans for Safe Tech and other communities where we support through the Stop 5G Community Empowerment Consulting Services. But first to you, Hal. So tell us a little bit how you first learned, you and your community first find out about the proposed 120-foot cell tower, and what was your initial reaction when you heard about the tower?
Our neighbors and my family's initial reaction was disbelief. To think that someone was actually contemplating putting in a 120-foot cell tower directly behind our house, so close that we could actually stand on our back porch and hit it with a rock. And it was in a landslide zone. And so an identified landslide zone by the city. And this thing just kind of took us all by surprise. And it's almost as if it was, I don't want to use the word clandestine planning, but it appeared that way because we didn't find out about it until it was almost approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so we're greatly disturbed by it. And we launched into action to try to stop this because literally no one in our neighborhood wanted it.
Right. And what were some of the main concerns you had initially? Like, was it health related? Was it environment related? Or did you just feel like there was something not right putting this infrastructure this close to residents and homes?
Well, we had all kinds of concerns. They were health, they were environment, they were aesthetic, they were, just the character of the neighborhood. And luckily, we found out with the help of Children's Health Defense Network that we could oppose this for some of those things. We understood that we couldn't oppose it for health reasons, which it just seems so counterintuitive that it was hard for us to understand that our government actually didn't want to protect us from these things. And, there were children in our neighborhood that were living close and under this tower. And so we had to really strategize how we would work to stop this because, once again, literally nobody wanted it. And we view it as a very unnecessary piece of infrastructure that is driven by financial profit.
Right. And I think it's very important to zone in on that point that Hal made before we're going to move on to Scott, that communities are prevented by federal law to oppose cell towers based on health and environmental concerns. to Section 704 of the Communications Act of 1996. And that's part of the problem. We can't emphasize that enough, that there is this huge need, which we're addressing through another initiative called 704 No More, to rectify that. But Scott, aside from the fact that we can't use health and environmental concerns to fight cell towers, tell us a little bit about how you and the Sub 5G initiative approached this case and what we have done with the Sitka residents so far, where things stand.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. First, 704 is a federal statute that directly says that local zoning authorities cannot regulate cell towers based on the environmental effects of the radio frequency emissions to the extent they comply with the FCC's emissions rules. Now, CHD is separately addressing this statute in two ways. First, as Mary mentioned, we have the 704 No More initiative, where we're going to directly challenge the constitutionality of this provision. Second, we're very active at the FCC, trying to convince it to change its emissions and exposure rules so that they actually reflect reality and recognize the biological and environmental effects of these emissions. However, in the Stop 5G initiative, we have figured out that most of these local zoning authorities are not too inclined to themselves directly challenge this federal statute. That's something that's going to happen in court. So as a consequence, what we do is we help local communities find other ways that remain permissible within the federal and oftentimes state structure to oppose towers, even when the main concern may be health and environmental effects. There are other reasons that you can bring forward to oppose cell towers. And we used all of those in Sitka. Property values is a big one. It's well demonstrated that a cell tower right next to a home is going to significantly reduce property values. And so that's one of the reasons that we can bring forward the public published science. If we get there in time, especially in front of the Planning Commission, we can bring forward professionals who can present expert opinions on property value impact in general and in the specific circumstance. Equally, it's related, but it is also different in the way that land use policies apply. There's visual effects. These things are ugly. Let's just face it, they're ugly. And it doesn't matter how you try to dress them up, make them look like something else. If you're right next door to one of these things, you're going to see it. It's Sitka especially, but it happens throughout the country. People have bought their homes where they are, specifically for the view. I mean, I was in Sitka a couple of weeks ago, and people buy their homes here in this very community so they can see the ocean and so that they can look up and see these beautiful mountains in this rainforest where Sitka exists. And this cell tower is just going to completely destroy their views. Finally, their safety and structural integrity here in Sitka, like Hal mentioned, it's in a landslide zone. And yet the applicant in this case did not come forward with any evidence that it had actually looked at the potential problem of landslides and how it was going to address it. This is a 120-foot tower. If it falls down, it's going to hit Hal. If there's a landslide, it's going to slide into his house. And it's the same thing with the other folks on that street. They are basically having their life and their property put at risk by this tower. So those are the main reasons that we were able to help the Sitkan folks address at the Planning Commission, and then ultimately on appeal, first at the Assembly. They all had to recuse for other reasons. There were some procedural reasons. This was sent to an administrative law judge to stand in their shoes, and we argued that 2 weeks ago. In this particular case, that local zoning ordinance says that they can put towers in by right if it is no taller than 35 feet. So the applicant here had to get what we call a variance from the ordinance. And that's a special dispensation. It requires a showing of unique circumstances. And in Alaska, and therefore also Sitka, state and local law says that you can't get a variance for pecuniary or financial reasons. And that's exactly what is the case here. They asked for their variance because they got a bunch of federal money. And according to what they say, they needed it to be 120 feet in order to reach all the desired users. And if it was 35 feet, they couldn't use their federal money. That's a pecuniary reason. The Planning Commission denied the variance because of that and some other reasons, including the ones that I went through before. This tower was denied because of views, property values, and the variance was for pecuniary reasons. We're now defending that decision on appeal.
Right. Thank you, Scott, for this comprehensive overview. And I think that's a good reminder that oftentimes residents are very successful in organizing before their local planning commissions getting these towers denied. And then what usually happens is that the tower company appeals that decision, and then it becomes more into a legal battle, which is where we currently are in Sitka. And we had this hearing before the administrative hearing officer 2 weeks ago. And so how, we always say that these fights, particularly before the Planning Commission, where you build the record that is afterwards looked at by a court, that these fights are about 80% political. It's about how well the community organizes and mobilizes and educates and advocates. And so Hal, walk us through a little bit like how you did that in your community. You learned about the cell tower. You knew there was a group of concerned residents. Like, how did you turn this into such a powerful movement on the local level, and what does your group do in terms of advocacy and education and outreach? How do you approach those hearings?
Well, first of all, I wish that we would have contacted Children's Health Defense Network earlier. And they could have helped us in our struggle. And this is a struggle. Don't make a mistake about that. We were behind the 8 ball right from the start. The Planning and Zoning Department actually recommended this tower to be approved, if you can believe that. And then the commission, after listening to our testimony, said, this is a really bad idea. And anybody that would come up and look where this tower is would say, this is a bad idea. What are you thinking? I mean, the slope is so steep that it's unbelievable. It's in a pristine rainforest. It's in a neighborhood with children. And they had 3 deaths from a landslide in Sitka about three or 4 years ago. And it's like, why would they even consider this? And so we got together and we said, what are we going to do? Because we feel kind of hopeless, because we found out about you couldn't contest it on health concerns, which was, paramount on everybody's minds. And so we just started, looking around, and I looked on the internet and discovered that Children's Health Defense Network had done some amazing work with this, and we contacted them, and they've been helpful. Without them, I think we wouldn't even have had a chance to fight this thing, because the way that federal law is structured, and we're actually fighting a tribal organization, even though it's a for-profit endeavor, that we've got so many things that we're trying to fix. And there was another community in Southeast that just had their planning commission deny it from the same company a 250-foot tower. So, and in our community, there's only 8,500 people. And there's plenty of providers right now. I mean, I could go out and get 4 different plans for cell or internet. And they've got at least 13 towers in this town already from one of it to other. And there's only 30 miles, or not even that much. There's 20 miles of road. And, everybody lives on the ocean front, basically up, about a mile, maybe mile and a half from the ocean. And so it's just the idea of this overpopulation of cell and internet broadband towers is just mind-boggling. Somehow we have to stop this growth. And I was just down south and I just was kind of shocked by the number of towers down there that are going up.
Right. So do you, tell us why people should pay attention to what's happening in Sitka and why should they care? Because I believe that this can really be seen as a part of the larger fight against this onslaught of industrial infrastructure and cell tower. So tell us why should people pay attention?
Well, I love that word onslaught because that's how it feels. You need to pay attention because it happens so quickly that you don't have time to mobilize. You don't have time to strategize on how to stop these things. And so I think that the companies actually rely on that. It's like, oh, all of a sudden, here it is. You've got 2 weeks or a week or 3 days or whatever it is to get together and have the planning commission stop it. And it could literally be in your backyards. This is proposed not only in a designated landslide zone, it's proposed in a zone residential 1 area. We didn't expect all of this to happen when we invested our life savings in this. And we aren't a bunch of rich people living on a hillside. We're just regular folks. And so it could end up in your backyard. And don't think that the companies won't use their political might, their financial might, and federal law to try to shoehorn it in where you live.
Right. I think that is a great wake-up call because we all need to pay attention because what's happening in the communities that we are representing could happen in your backyard or on your playground or on your school football fields tomorrow. So Scott, tell us, how can people find out if there is a cell tower proposed near them? And if they find out that there is a proposal, what do they do?
Okay, first of all, let me follow up with one thing Hal said, because here's what's really infuriating about all this. In Sitka, but in a lot of other places, they're actually using federal money to do this. The federal government is in very large part funding the onslaught of this wireless proliferation. And then they are disabling the local communities from being able to fight them on the real issue that we all really should be fighting over, which is the health and environmental effects. It's just an insane situation. Now, how can people find out? In most jurisdictions, there is a notice requirement. Sadly, it's relatively short. We call it the notice radius. But in most jurisdictions, if you fall within a certain distance from where the cell tower is proposed, you're supposed to get direct notice. Other times, it's merely a sign. There may be a sign that goes up where the property is. Now, in this particular situation, it's on what I call a goat trail, hard to get to. But technically, there should be a sign there that says we're proposing to put this monstrosity. If you got a problem, talk to the planning commission. They also usually publish in the local paper. Finally, you can oftentimes go to the planning commission's website or the planning department website, and they typically have a list of where these things are being proposed. You need to be vigilant. As soon as you get a notice or you see a sign or you see something in the paper, you need to start acting. And, we really recommend that one of the first things you do is call us so that we can help you get organized. We have a game plan. We have a playbook, and we can help folks get together really quick and start putting together an opposition package. The resources are fairly free. You can use us, or you can just use the resources that we publish. But you've got to start acting really soon. It is sometimes hard to find out, It's oftentimes quite late. You only get notice 10 or 15 days before the hearing, but you've got to really, really start kicking into gear as soon as you get any wind of this.
Thank you, Scott. And so what you just saw on the screen was the stop5g.org step-by-step instruction. And if you go to the website stop5g.org, you can see that step 1, where it says find out if a cell tower is proposed near you, you can look up the steps that Scott was just talking about, your planning commission, your news bulletin, etc. So as we continue to fight with Sitkans for safe tech, Scott, what can we expect happening in the next couple of weeks?
Under the schedule, the hearing officer is supposed to issue the decision a week from this Friday on the 12th. And we will know. The options are basically 3. One, can affirm what the planning commission did, affirm the denial, we would win, or can remand back to the planning commission for the development of further evidence, basically a do-over, or worst case, can overturn the planning commission and decide to issue the permit. From there, it'll either be over at the local level, one way or another, potentially go to court, or we'll be back before the planning commission and starting over.
Right. So either way, it's not over. These fights, they tend to drag on. So Hal, are you and your community ready to continue fighting?
Oh, absolutely. And, I think that should we have to continue the fight, we're going to expand our efforts for public awareness, because this particular company has at least 5 more towers planned in a community that already has at least 13 towers. And so it's the thing that people don't understand is anytime you enter into this kind of conflict, it's very stressful for the people involved. You have mothers that are virtually, besides themselves, worried about their children. You've got, elderly people who know they can't get out of the way of a landslide. And, there are just so many things that are at play here. And it's very stressful on the people to fight this stuff. It's expensive too. I mean, without Children's Health Defense Network, we wouldn't have been able to afford any of this to fight this. And, like Scott said, they're using government money against us. This company went ahead and bought the land anyway, even though they don't have the variance for the tower. And, it just makes it makes me more stubborn wanting to stop this, because if we can stop this, I believe that we can show people there's hope that citizens can stop something you don't want.
Right. Yeah, we are very used to that, and you put that perfectly. It's a long fight and it's an overwhelming fight, but we are ready and committed to fight alongside you. I think you guys have been doing an amazing job in Sitka. And for everybody else, I encourage you to visit stop5g.org, find out if a cell tower or antenna is proposed near you. Also visit 704nomore.org to learn about the broader federal effort and subscribe to our newsletter email list at the bottom of the page. And last but not least, also follow us on social media at Stop5G Near Me and at 704 No More on all major platforms. Thank you very much, Hal, for taking the time to come and talk to us about your efforts in Sitka. And thank you, Scott, as always, for being here and for being the great representation of these communities that you are. And with that, I will see you guys in 2 weeks, and I'll hand back over